So she's actually going to share her own real life examples right now, so we'll get her on. And then we've got Feifei, who's actually a lawyer, Millennium Law, Millennium Lawyers or Millennium Law in Auckland Central, and she has done a lot of apartment transactions. So she's actually going to share some kind of real life kind of prices and examples right now that's out there. So yeah, I'll hand you over to Nikki Keen on rentals. Yeah, Nikki.
Okay, thank you so much, Hamish, for the invitation, and welcome everybody. Thank you for coming out on a cold, dark Auckland winter night. I'm Nikki Keen. I run a independent property management company called Keen on Rentals. We operate out of the Auckland CBD, and around 75% of the rental properties that we manage are Auckland City apartments. And the reason that we're focused in that market so much is, for myself, that's where I began my journey to investing in rental properties as a financial strategy for security going forward. And I thought I'd just share with you some of those experiences that I had in purchasing in this market. So part of my thinking for why would you want to invest in apartments versus a standalone property is, at the time, the prices were quite affordable compared to a standalone house. There's a lower cost of renovations. There's only so much you can do inside 30 square metres on one floor of a building that's got 18 floors. You certainly can't go up with an extension or out for double the size of the living space. Maintenance costs can be shared. They can be large, but they're also shared with the other owners in the building, so you're not solely responsible for taking on a major piece of work. Typically at that time, and I'm talking around 10 years ago, the rental yield, when you looked at your financial calculations, was typically higher than you would find in a standard rental property. So I was always looking for something that was cash flow positive from the outset. It needed to pay for itself and then pay me as well. We also had a proven rental market in the city, so there is a large population of people who live and work in the city. Recent statistics I've heard quoted this week tell us that there's around 45,000 people that actually live in the CBD, either as owners of their own property or tenants in rental properties in the city. So there's a big concentration of people who live there, and a lot of them are tenants. So this is an early example of an apartment that I purchased in a building in Bankside Street. Purchased that in the end of 2012. It's freehold. The purchase price was $165,000 at that time. It's 29 square metre studio apartment, so quite a small footprint. And at that time the banks would lend up to 50% of the total purchase price. And it was tenanted. It had tenants in place that were paying $215 a week at that time, and so on those numbers it had a gross yield of around about 6.8%, just looking at it as it was at the time. So what did it look like? Well, it was pretty dingy and dark. It was cluttered with second-hand furniture that was either rescued from somebody's basement or purchased from a second-hand furniture shop, certainly not purchased for this particular small space. It was pretty grubby. Nobody had done any bathroom cleaning for quite some time. There was mould in the showers. There was things with furry stuff growing on it in the fridge, and it didn't smell so good. There was an oversized outdoor furniture set on the tiny balcony, which was completely rotted and mouldy. There was tenants' personal items everywhere, and they weren't the best of housekeepers when it was being shown. This is how it's presented for sale. And the one that I really liked the best, which puts off most people when they open the bathroom doors, the toilet was really skanky, and people will just close the door and walk away and go, that's not for me. So even if you have to replace the whole toilet because it can't be cleaned back to perfection, it's not a big cost. So that's a good one to have. So what do we do for it? Start with a big deep clean. Get the shower glass restored so it's clear and you can see through it. It's not milky and transparent and absolutely covered in scale and soap scum. New carpets throughout, new painting, put roller blinds in, get the appliances serviced and working. If you can't restore them, then replace them. Brand new furniture package, right down to the bedroom and bathroom linen, so somebody can just walk in carrying their suitcase, everything's ready to go for them. In the smaller units, we put in a storage bed that can lift up from the frame, gives you extra space to store big items like suitcases and that kind of thing. So now what does it look like? Well, it's light and bright. It's got nice furniture that fits in the spaces. It's got an outdoor that you can see through the windows. It's got roller blinds. It's got full kitchen, everything configured and all the appliances working, everything you need in your kitchen cupboards, plates and crockery and kettle and toaster and all those things. It's got a new bed, new furniture, and an outdoor cityscape view from your balcony that's really easy to appreciate when it looks like that. So what does that mean for your tenants? Well, it certainly makes a difference to the rent. We were renting at $215 a week when it was purchased, and when we put it back on the market at the beginning of 2013, immediately jumped to $390 per week. We got to $410, $420, and by 2020 we were at $420 a week with no vacancies at all. Our gross yield was up to around 13%, our net yield was around 8.5% on the original purchase price, and then we closed the borders. So the normal population of tenants who'd be interested in renting a property like this, international students, people who are studying at the universities, people who are working in hospitality and retail in the city, people on work visas, they're not here. They're not coming in through the border at all. So we managed to retain $420 a week through to the end of 2021. 2022 we've dropped to $375 per week. And only a 6-month tenancy. It's now vacant, and I'm expecting that we will probably drop again to around $350 per week to get us through to the end of this year. And the anticipation is that things will begin to improve at the beginning of next year with the start of the academic year, providing that we don't go back into full lockdowns and border closures. This is an example of a more recent one, 2018. This building was a remedial building, it's a leaky building. So it was under shrink wrap for a very long time, and it had a large project that was done on it. And this purchase was when the project was just completing. All of the work had been done, and the final sign-off and inspections had been put forward to council to get the Code of Compliance issued. It was purchased for $430,000. The reason we could do a straight purchase quite quickly at that time was if you were looking for bank lending to cover a lot of this, and they would cover up to 80%, without the CCC, the banks were still reluctant to sign off, so there was a little window of opportunity there. It was currently rented at $425 per week and had a gross yield of approximately 5% at that time. It looked okay. It was cluttered. It had tenants' furniture in it, had been rented unfurnished. A lot of dark wood cabinetry that was in poor condition. Most of the kitchen appliances were not working. That washer dryer that's sitting there didn't work at all. The dishwasher was leaking every time it was used, so the tenant used it to store dry food, so they didn't use it as a dishwasher at all. You can see to the right of that washer dryer on the top left photo, there's a chipboard cabinet, garage cabinet from Bunnings that's tucked into halfway into the lounge because there's nowhere to store things in the kitchen that's been added at that side. And there's some outdoor furniture. It did have a decent balcony and it did have decent views on it. So what do we do for this one? Well, we renovated it. We took out the old kitchen and we put in a new one and we reconfigured it. We put in new appliances, revamped the bathroom and the bathroom cabinetry. We put new wardrobes in the bedrooms with proper fitted wardrobe spaces. We did some electrical refit in the lounge to reconfigure where things could be plugged in, particularly things like the TV, and a brand new furniture package. So now what does it look like? Well, that kitchen looks completely different. It's much bigger and it's got its own storage space and cabinets that go right to the ceiling. All of the appliances are new and working. Two bedrooms, one internal with a sliding door and one on the front of the unit. Also fully furnished with bedroom linen and bathroom linen, and some nice outdoor furniture so that there's capacity to use that outside space as well. We didn't have to redo carpets. We did do a repaint, and the good thing about having been a remedial building is it's currently up to code. So all of the glazing is double glazing, it's got soundproofing, it's quite warm. And what does that mean in terms of rents? Well, as soon as it came back on the market post-renovation, it was rented for a corporate rental. A company rented it, and they were putting their clientele through it on a regular basis at $5.75 per week. That company went straight out of business as soon as the borders closed, and so we have a private tenant in there currently at $500 a week, and they've been sustained since the beginning of 2021. We're expecting a vacancy towards the very end of this year, and hoping that we'll start to see the pickup in the CBD rental market and not be too badly impacted on the rent. So a significant jump in rent and a good return for what was an initial purchase. So the types of tenancies that we see and operate in the CBD at the moment is there are some properties that you can purchase that are rent by the room with shared kitchens and bathrooms. So they can be apartments that have 4 single bedrooms, and you rent each room separately, but it's got a common kitchen and a common bathroom and living space. Or they can be actually commercially consented as a hostel or a boarding house. Standard rentals can be fixed term for a locked-in period, and then you decide if you want to renew it or not, or periodic, so it has no fixed end date. The tenant can give 28 days notice to move out whenever they want to. And typically our tenant population would be students, visa holders, working professionals based in and around the city and who find it really convenient to be living in that area. We still do have some corporate rentals, companies that are buying or renting for a period of time. Examples of that would be film crews, projects for a particular film where they have the staff that are based in the city, and for the period of the film project they'll be renting it as a corporate rental. Another example would be construction crews working on some of the big projects around the city, and they've got project managers and engineers and people that are recruited from elsewhere that they want to have quite close to the project while it's running. You can purchase an apartment and be a private owner and have it leased back to a hotel that operates in the building, and they'll give you a guaranteed rental, and they then lease it out as a commercial operation for their hotel service. There are also a number of operators that stepped into the short-term accommodation market, the likes of Airbnb and holiday homes, and they offer those sorts of services which are not standard tenancies, they're more commercial. It has implications for the rates that the council would charge. There may be body corporate restrictions inside certain buildings about whether you can or cannot operate that style of rental, and the vacancy rates can be variable, so it depends on your contracts. Certainly the hotel services in and around the city have been badly impacted by lockdowns, and a number of them have closed, they're no longer operating. So why would you look at apartments now in this particular market? Because it sounds a bit grim, doesn't it? We have had the prolonged border closures. We've got businesses that have closed down. There are a lot of commercial vacancies in the retail sector particularly. There's been a financial impact on landlords, and some of them are choosing to exit the market because of the financial circumstances they find themselves in. There's been quite an influx of social housing tenancies in the apartment sector. So you've got this match-up of people that desperately need a place and a home to live and are being placed by social agencies, and vacancies that are occurring in the city with nobody to rent them. So put the two together, and that means that you've got people who are on the emergency housing waiting list going into the apartment buildings, and that can be disruptive for the rest of the residents that are living in there. There are quite a number of new build apartment complexes coming online with the building delays that we've had, the construction delays. It means that they're actually coming online and brand new. So you've got a brand new building that's got 200, 300 apartments to rent, and they all come on the market at the same time. So that has an impact on the market too. That overall has meant that the prices to buy are lower, typically. So you've got to be prepared for getting something at a good price, but your returns at the beginning might be quite small and quite low. Your expectation is that that situation improves as the entire CBD market situation improves. You need to be prepared to do your homework. Find out about the building, find out what's going on in the building. Does it have any construction or remedial issues? Is it freehold? Is it leasehold? What are the overall costs in addition to your purchase price? But when you do the numbers, there may well be scenarios that are really quite financially attractive to go forward with. Okay, I'm going to hand back to Hamish, and we'll come back for a question time at the end of the session.
Thank you, Nikki. That was great. Thank you for sharing that with us. Look, the thing is, we've got Feifei now that's going to come on. One thing I should actually just kind of, from a lending perspective, obviously we're mortgage advisors, and one of the big differences used to be for the tinier apartments, the deposit requirement was a lot more. In some sense, that is kind of gone now because of the Reserve Bank rules where, even for any investment property, you probably need 40%. And now, with even a square, tiny apartments, even less than 50 square meters, we may be able to do it with a 40% deposit or that much spare equity. So that kind of difference is gone now. So I'll hand you over to Feifei, who's got some interesting things to share.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Feifei, and I'm a lawyer. I work with Millennium Lawyers. It's my own law firm. We set up right in the CBD, and I've always been there, based in the CBD. So what we do in CBD, we sell and buy lots and lots of apartments, obviously of many different kinds. So that's my logo on the top, so Millennium Lawyers. I'm going to start with introducing a few types of apartments that you can think of purchase. And these are life experiences because we are dealing with apartment buy and sell every single day. So you might find some price quite attractive. They are real, they are not made up prices. So obviously it's not a lawyer's job to do price, but I know you want to invest, you want to see whether the price is possible for you to even consider. So I will start with some brand new apartments. So this is one of them that is going to settle in July or August. We call it Queen's Park. It's right on Queen Street next to Myers Park. That's why it's Queen's Park Residences. So it's live one in my hand for sale now even. I'm not a real estate agent. I don't get a commission, but I'm just telling you the real examples. 700,000 for one bedroom over 45 square meters and with one car park. And slightly with another bedroom, 750 you can get. Because these buyers are my overseas buyers, they paid 20% deposit, and it's unlikely they will be able to come back to this country and get the money in. So most likely they cannot settle themselves. So what do? They sell it cheap. So they will have to pay agency fees. So most likely you will get 10% off on top of that price. So that's just an example for you. So if you want to know a bit upper floor, then it will be like 800 for 35 square meter, plus balcony 5 square meter, and one bedroom type. So again, I'm not a real estate agent, so I talk as if, like lots of price, but it's mainly for your understanding what kind of market we can get into. So that's one example, brand new apartment. The next one, and I'm going to give you two examples of existing apartments. Again, you can see the size is similar, what we call it a shoebox, and what Nikki has shared also. Those type are quite attractive and good rental return. So that's like 270,000 to less under 400,000, 2-bedroom even. And this one also between 80,000 to 250. Those are the property we transact often, okay? So they are current pricing. And since I'm on existing apartment, I want to elaborate a bit more on the legal side. When you buy an apartment, what you are looking for. So one good news for you is because I'm an expert in it, I have a lot more documents to read, like body cop minutes for you, but the fee is the same as existing, a house, which has much less work to do. So what do? We check body cop minutes. What do we look out in the body cop minutes? Is because anything happening in the body cop, you have the right to know. So under Unit Title Acts, it's called disclosure. So if you buy, you have an agreement and a pre-contract disclosure. So we read the disclosure for you. What are they disclosing in it? Normally it says whether it has a leaky history or not, whether tightness issue. So that's a pre-contract. Then before settlement, 5 working days before settlement, they have to give us a pre-settlement disclosure. In that document, we'll find a lot more about the apartment, whether the owner has paid the fee, whether there are some disputes with the body corp. If there are things like this disclosed before settlement, we have the right not to settle. So again, legally, we are there to protect you. So what do we look out for in body corp minutes? Sometimes I can give you some examples. During 1990s, of course, a lot of leaky homes. So I will show you later on an example of a leaky home. When it's leaky, they have to repair. They have to raise legal fee for the litigation. They have to raise a special levy for the repair, remedial work, until they settle. Otherwise, owner have to pocket the money. But as a buyer, you are buying into it. What do? I will assign the vendor's right to litigation to you. That means you have double goodness in it. You get the price cheaper because you know it has leaky, and you also will get, if it's remedial work done, you get a higher value. And meanwhile, if the government come to the table to settle, most leaky home, government come to the table to settle, and you get that, compensation also. So it's not bad, isn't it? So I'm not really coming to leaky home yet. I'm only talking about existing. What do you look out for in the body corp minutes? Sometimes body corp owners, they have some issues. So in their minutes, they will say who and who not pay their body corp levy, and how do we collect the debt. So you immediately know they have some problem with owner not paying levy. That means others have to pocket it in. Meanwhile, and then you have body corp have to pay for the going to court. So this type of thing you can subtly pick up. But obviously we are experienced, we read for you the body corp minutes for free. So because we are experienced in it, it's easy for us to buy. Say, for example, you also want to buy a commercial building, for example, and you will see from the body corp minutes what is the, Hobson Street, they have a lot of old building. So the old building, they will tell you what is the earthquake rating. Recently, I saw one, I was quite shocked. All the owners don't want to repair under 33%, you have to repair. but theirs is 34%. And all the owners decide they are not going to repair. So what it happens when you are a new buyer, you will get into it and immediately have to pocket money for earthquake strengthening repair. So those are just tiny examples that during those water tightness issue time, when you transfer from your own name to company or to trust, if you didn't pick up the water tightness issue, you will also be, the government will not compensate you because you are deemed to know that this property has a leaky issue. So there are a lot of things that a specialist lawyer needs to deal with in terms of apartment. So that's just a few examples for you, okay? So, and the next type of apartment I'm going to show you. Okay, there are even better news for leasehold apartment. I was told never buy leasehold apartment property at all. So I even advise client not to buy. But from the cash flow point of view, you have a spare 30,000. Actually, I'm handling quite a few for 40,000, 70,000. Very easy, you can buy an apartment 57 square meter to 77 square meter, under 100,000. You have that spare cash and you don't need a loan, then this becomes like a good. So once you have this, that will give you equity for you to buy a house that Hamish can help you with, because he has a lot of story on that. I heard him saying that the bank always want to see your cash flow. Okay, but again, leasehold is a specialist area. If you are interested in it, you put small money in, I will advise you in details in terms of legal area, okay? So another type, and is what I talked about, sorry. Okay, so it's the leaky home I've mentioned. There are 2 blocks in the city now that's mostly dealing with, I've done a lot on 135 Hobson Street. The other one is Gore Street. I think it's 14 Gore Street. 16 Gore Street, yeah. So I've done lots and lots of assignments for right to litigate. I've told you, once you have the right, you get cheaper price, you get compensation, and you also get value up when it's remediated. So those are a few examples I'm giving you, but there are so many different types of apartment in the city. So my advice is find a lawyer that knows what they are talking about in terms of apartments. They are quite different. But one thing you also need to know is suburbans. A lot of like New Lynn, they have a lot of new apartments coming up, okay? So apartments in general are the same. They have a special rule under Unit Title Act. They are different title, so just give you a brief example, like you have a fee simple for a house, you have a cross lease in the together, joined together, traditionally those units, and you have fee simple unit title. You have leasehold unit title, okay? And then you have leasehold. So those are different titles and that you need to be advised very carefully on titles also. I think we will have time for questions. So I will leave for now, but I am available to answer questions later. Thank you.
Yeah, okay, so let's open it up for questions. I'll probably need your help, Faitha and Nikki. So maybe come a bit closer if you can jump in depending on the questions. Do we have any questions there on the comments as well on the live? Can you see anything? Yeah, don't shake your head like just make one up. Pretend like someone's watching this, okay? Come on.
LVR, talk us about the deposits. The bank requires a minimum deposit for the leasehold at a different square meter size.
Yeah, it's funny, yeah, with leasehold. I mean, these days, for tiny leaseholds, if you have 40 to 50% deposit, there's probably a deal in it. The only thing is with leasehold, we need to look at the term of the loan, make sure it's in line with the review period or the term of the lease, and we've got to take the ground lease into account and that kind of things with the leasehold. So there's a little bit more to it with the leasehold. Avi, did you have a question?
So if I had an apartment and I wanted to put a heat pump in it,
That's a good
would I be
question.
able to-
That's a good question. Can you put a heat pump in your apartment? Anybody want to take that one?
It depends. So one of the constraints for putting heat pumps in might be what kind of outdoor space do you have where you can put the inverter for the heat pump that is totally associated with your unit and not imposing on somebody else. So we do have a number of buildings in the city that don't have an outside space. They've just got the exterior window, just like we have in the office building here. So if you were going to put a heat pump on this level, if you put it down on the ground, you're on somebody else's property, and you can't put it further up because you're on somebody else's property. So that would be one constraint. Another constraint might well be permission from the body corporate.
Yeah.
So some bodies corporate have created, yes, you can put a heat pump in, but it has to be of this particular type. This is where it gets fitted. It can only be penetrating through the window glazing. You can't put holes through the wall, which is a structural wall, and the thermal envelope of the entire building. You can't put holes through that for your heat pump ducting. But they will allow you to do it, and they'll publish the conditions that you can do it in. For example, that building that I showed you earlier in Day Street that had been remediated and it's got double glazing and it's completely reclad. If we push anything through either the glazing or the cladding, we will void the warranties on all the new build stuff. So it can't have heat pumps
Wow,
in there.
that's shocking. And if you're up, the higher you are, the more dreadful it might be in summer.
Except that, you just imagine what it's going to sound like when those heat pumps are 6, 7, 8 years old, haven't been maintained, because lots of landlords don't do routine maintenance as timely as they should. They're all leaking.
Some people don't even clean their filters.
They're leaking, they're rusty, they're rattling, and there's 100 of them stacked on the outside of the building.
Yep.
So there's lots of bodies corporate that are saying there are other ways to heat and cool your building rather than heat pumps.
Another question that, Avi, that was a really good question about heat pumps actually. Avi's got some always some great things to say, but what if I can't pay my body corp?
They will come after you.
What if I don't pay?
They will take you to court.
And then?
They'll take you through a debt collection process and you could end up insolvent.
What if these remedial works and I can't afford to pay?
Yeah. So that
Could
does
they sell my apartment?
Yes.
Yep.
It could go to mortgagee sale.
Can my body corporate go up?
Yes. Always.
Does it go down?
Sometimes. Sometimes. And as Feifei pointed out, sometimes there are revenues that come back to the body corporate as a result of some kind of action and recovery of monies in past, and then that gets distributed to the owners as well. So if you reduce a cost that's been a major cost by doing something different, then that can affect the operational maintenance budget for the body corporate and take it down. So it just depends on what's happening in the building. Typically, the trend is up rather than down, because maintenance costs, the costs of labour, the costs of parts,
Inflation.
all of those sorts of
That
things.
magic word, inflation?
Yep, all of those take effect. So body corporate fees, like anything else, are to cover services, and the cost of the service will increase. So should your rents.
I think that's good. Are there any other questions?
What are the things we got to watch out for leasehold in particular?
Leasehold, probably when the review was last, I guess, and
Yeah.
the ground lease.
The terms of the ground lease, what your particular contribution or your lease fee will be on an annual basis, because it can be quite substantial, and what's involved in that. So there's some interesting factors with leasehold. For example, we've got apartments that are built that don't have land underneath them. They're built on a wharf structure. So part of your lease involves maintaining the wharf structure so the whole thing doesn't sink into the harbour. And you've got to know what you're in for those costs, what the terms of the ground lease are and when it gets renewed, when it's due to be revised, and if there's any contention or dispute between the owners of the actual property, the ground that it sits upon, and the leaseholders. So there has been some litigation in those areas in the past. A number of them have found a way forward, and so there are terms agreed. You just need to know the details of those, and it'll be in the minutes and in the title.
Yeah. Well, I think that's pretty good. Any other questions you can think of?
Oh, Hamish.
Yep.
If you buy the leasehold property
Yep.
and if you fully paid, and it will affect the investment property when you buy into the another one. So like bank will consider that is a cash flow.
Yes, so that's a good question. So yes, with a leasehold apartment, the cash flow can be considered as income after paying the, of course, the ground lease and the other costs. So yes, it can positively have an impact on your overall portfolio. And you're right. Probably if once you've paid off the loan, because the loan could be on a shorter term. Some apartments, where the serviced ones, I think we mentioned the hotel type thing, some lenders don't like to use that income as such. That income is sometimes a bit harder to extract sometimes in some years. Yeah.
Some of the modern leasehold in viaduct, they don't even have ground rent. So why not? 800, 600 something? You have 125 years ground rent free.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
So there are things we can dip into. So I just forgot to put that one on.
That's
Yeah,
good.
just reminded them.
Any other questions while we've got?
On an average, how much the body corporate as a percentage can go up? Is it like minimum that they all have you
Well,
noticed
there
over
is-
the 5 years? On an average, how much is usually increased by, or is it whatever they can do it?
There's no such thing as usual. It is a building by building scenario depending what's happening in the building, but your annual budget gets reviewed every year. The body corporate has an annual general meeting that all of the owners are invited to participate in. At that meeting they will elect a body corporate committee, so a representative group. You can only be on the body corporate committee if you're an owner, and I'm on two of those. And you'll be responsible on the committee for looking at the bills that come across the table for routine maintenance, servicing the lifts, getting the fire safety, the building warrant of fitness done, all of those sorts of things. You're just checking the bills that there's an administrator service that you'll be paying for as well. But the body corporate fees and the budgets for the coming year will be agreed every year at the AGM. So you'll have heads up of if there's increases in the normal operating costs. You'll also have heads up about there's some special levies coming for particular pieces of work on the building, however small or large they may be. And it might be as simple as we've got 2 lifts in this building. They've been there for 30 years. They've been very heavily used and they're past their end of life. We need to start the replacement program, and we choose to do that as a special levy rather than just rack the whole fees up. So those sorts of things year on year are decided by the owners group.
So the owners group can really have a big impact on it.
Yeah.
Could you have a bunch of owners that just like to repaint the whole common areas all the time and need a new gate? Maybe they want signage, a logo for the building. Are there some crazy owners around?
Typically the problem that we have within a body corporate is the opposite. It's the lack of interest in the slightest. One of the biggest challenges we have for the AGM for the body corporate is achieving a quorum. And getting at least a minimum number of owners to participate in the votes to get things over the table, because if people are investors in multiple properties, or they're not coming in to do meetings in person, a lot of them have been Zoom meetings over the last couple of years, or they're offshore and overseas in different time zones and even different languages. They don't participate. The paperwork comes across their email and goes to the bottom of their email list, and they don't contribute. So getting traction with the body corporate owners is probably a bigger challenge than a large group going rogue.
I guess some of the clues for this, you might have mentioned, was the AG, the annual general meeting notes, which the bank's always asked for, the
Yep.
last 2 years.
And that's what Feifei was talking about too, going through the minutes, and she's got the experience to go through the minutes on your behalf and actually pick out what's written in there. The changes, very recent changes to the Unit Titles Act, are really tightening up on some of the vagueness that's happened there when it's talking about disclosing things like, we think we might have a leaky building problem. So you've got some heads up that there could be a problem coming, but it's not quantified and you don't know when.
Nikki, one thing, what do you think is going to happen to all these wonderful car parks if there's no cars in Queen Street? They'll turn into storage sheds, I guess.
Well, there's not a lot of them left. There's a lot of new buildings that are built without car parks or with very minimal, certainly not a car park per apartment, and the smaller footprint apartments very generally didn't have car parks in with them. There are some innovations that are starting to come in where, as part of the service that the building operates, there might be a shared vehicle pool, like an electric vehicle pool, and you can book the vehicle as part of being an owner in the building, just like you can book time in the tennis courts or other facilities that the building might operate. So there's some innovation that's coming around that. There are buildings and apartment buildings on Queen Street. If you live in the building and your car park access is off Queen Street, you're going to have to be able to get into your building. That those rights should be preserved somehow in the pedestrianisation plan. You can purchase a car park separately as a separate title and add it to your apartment if you need to. And frequently, if we have an apartment that has a car park, we can end up renting the apartment and the car park separately.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Yeah, I have seen that. Cool. I think that was really good. Thank you for that, Feifei and Nikki. That was very helpful, and thanks for watching and for the questions.
Thank you all.